some of these videos recognize Mike Tyson. He's helping us out again today. And I've got Jax Butler with me.
Hello.
Say hello, Jax.
Hi, I'm Jax. I'm from LaBarque Creek, Missouri, and I'm a saddle fitter in that area. We're going to talk a little bit about saddle fit today on one of Brett's horses. Should talk a little bit about conformation first, even though we got him saddled already.
And I can jerk that saddle off.
Yeah, let's pull it off and start from the beginning and just talk a little bit about how this horse is built and some considerations. Am I in your view?
Oh, man, it's just a video.
Yeah.
This has been really cool for me because I kind of fit horses just by feel and intuition and just because I've rode a lot of them. But I don't really know all that much about saddle fitting, and so Jax helped me with another one, and we just kind of made some really small adjustments, made that saddle fit better.
So while he's pulling that saddle off, I want to talk a little bit about what to expect if you have a saddle fitter out. So if you have a saddle fitter out, the first thing they should do is take a look at your horse. They should look to see if they're sore anywhere. If you have horses that have white hairs on them, where it's like, the size of a quarter or a dime or something like that, a lot of people don't realize that's actually scar tissue. That's damage that's already been done by equipment that didn't fit. In most cases, when I go out and do a fitting, 9 times out of 10, I find people have saddles are too wide. Then you're putting a bunch of pressure behind the shoulder and you can get that scar tissue and white marks as a result. So this particular horse, looking at him, he's got a downhill build, so his withers are lower than his hindquarters. That's something to take into consideration. You're not looking for that saddle to be level because your horse's back isn't level. It's going to be a little downhill just like your horse's. In some cases, they make shim pads where you might put a shim in the front to keep the saddle from digging into the shoulder if you can't find a saddle tree that's a good match for this horse. So when a saddle fitter comes out, they're going to evaluate things like that and talk to you about that. Some young horses, they'll grow out of it. Some of them don't. You may have to change your saddle as they grow as well. That's not uncommon at all. So from there, after they take a look at your horse, they're going to ask you if you do have any equipment, what you've been riding in, to go ahead and saddle your horse. And then, so the next thing he's going to do is saddle this horse back up, and we're going to check a couple of points and talk you through it. And you can check these points on your horse the next time you go out and saddle. The thing after that I would normally do at a saddle fitting that we'll do later, but we may not do on camera, is you should ride in that saddle. You're going to ride for 15 to 20 minutes. We're going to see how everything settles. We're going to check the various points again. I would expect the rider to give me some feedback about their horse if they notice anything different. Maybe all of a sudden their lazy horse has more energy because it can move, or they feel like they have a longer stride. Those are different things you might notice when you improve your saddle fit. And then after that, you would pull your saddle and we can talk about sweat patterns. Some people look at dry spots and think, oh, that meant there was too much pressure, but not necessarily. You can have dry spots where you don't have contact with the tree on the horse's back. That can be just as much of a problem. So we'll go ahead and saddle this horse up again and discuss some things that we're seeing here.
Saddle him up, chore boy.
That's right. For once, I'm not having to saddle one. I like this. It's your horse. Makes sense you saddle him, right?
Right. Why not? Well, I'm the one that made you do this, so.
That's right. I was volun drafted.
All undrafted?
Volun drafted.
Yeah. I like that.
It's a useful word. It's slightly different than voluntold.
Voluntold.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to try to talk loud here so she's got the mic on so it'll pick me up. I'm just saddling this horse. This is the way I would saddle him, to just now go over here and take 3 steps off and step on him and go punch cows. So I'm not doing anything out of the norm for me as far as the way I prepare one. all yours.
All right, perfect. Hi, it's me again. Every time I walk over, he's like, I only know Brett, and we have to have this little meeting of mind scratching moment, so bear with us. So one of the first things I look at is, do we have anything touching the horse's spine? You don't want to have any part of your saddle pressing down on the withers. So I'm going to slide my hand in here. I don't have this gullet here pressing on the withers. That would be a problem. I've actually gone out and worked on horses that their horse was lame, and it turned out they had a nerve impingement from a saddle digging into the spine right there at the wither. The other thing I'm going to look for is, we talked about, you want your saddle tree. That's what your saddle is built on, to have as much contact with your horse's back. That's why the shape matters so much. It's not just about the width. It can be the angles of your bars being each side of your saddle tree. So one of the things I'm going to check here is to see, do I have contact behind the shoulder, which I do. And then I'm going to check, do I have contact here in the middle? I do. I cannot get my hand up to where that bar is. That's good. We have contact in the middle. We have contact in the back. And when I step back from this horse, since this horse is downhill, as you remember from when we had the saddle off of him, that saddle is following the same slope as this horse's build. That's what we want. If we were to shim it up any more in the front, it would put all of this pressure where, hey buddy, I'm gonna come over again. Or if you lifted the front up here, you'd be putting a bunch of pressure in his lower back and you'd have a sore horse. You don't want to do that. Can you think of any other things that might be of interest in regards to this, or any questions?
I was going to jerk this saddle off and put that one I've been riding him on. Hello, everybody.
Got like the phantom voice.
I was going to jerk this one off and put the one I have been riding him on.
Yeah.
That you said didn't fit.
Yeah.
Let's put that on it and just point out why.
Yeah.
Why it doesn't fit.
Absolutely.
This horse is so confused because this will be the third time we've saddled him.
And he hasn't done any work
4
in between.
Yeah.
And once he gets the saddle off, I'm going to point out where your horse's shoulder blade is and a way to find that, so you can check where that is on your horse too.
Mikey. He likes it.
Yeah, that one just sits down so much better.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna walk over to him again. We're gonna do our little welcome ritual again. Hi. I know, every time I come over, I rub on you. So for this horse, if you take your hand like a knife edge like this, and you slide along your horse, your hand's gonna drop in behind that shoulder blade. That's a good way to find where that's at. On some horses that have extra weight on them or extra body condition, it may be a little harder to find that shoulder blade because they can have a fat pad back here. In those cases, understand that if you start working your horse, like you have a horse that has extra condition, then you start working them, your saddle may not fit as you get that horse more fit because these fat deposits are gonna get smaller or even disappear.
I'll point out something here about that shoulder blade. This horse is 4 years old, and you said already that as they age, you may have to change saddles with them if you start as 18-month or 2-year-old or whatever. Because when I started riding this horse, and the camera won't be able to see it, there is a couple of white hairs here, and there's a handful on the other side. The way this horse matured and the way he was built when I started riding him, his shoulder blade, which is right there, it's right in line with his girth, and so my girth sits back here a little bit. When I started riding him, his shoulder blade was actually behind the girth, and so there was no possible way nothing I had fit him.
And that combined with being a downhill horse, you already have a tendency to put more pressure in that area.
Put a bunch of pressure right here. Consequently, I tried to ride him really, really light until he matured, so I didn't make his back sore and make him cranky. But you'll find that, and not all of them, they don't all grow out of it, but a lot of them, as they elongate and as those joints start to fuse and as they grow, that shoulder blade, it doesn't really move forward. Actually, all of this moves back, but you'll find that saddles fit them better. So I'll grab the saddle I had been riding him in, and you can talk about why it didn't fit.
Yeah, we'll just girth it right back up and talk about it and compare notes.
What kind of craziness is this? You keep saddling me and unsaddling me.
It's like Groundhog Day. Can't decide which saddle, huh? And anytime you're checking these points, you want to have this saddle girth down like you're going to go ride. If you have it just barely girthed, that's not really going to be an accurate way to check. A lot of the things we're talking about too are specific to rigid trees. If you are someone who might be riding recreationally or someone who's not using like a saddle you would rope out of and you have a flex tree saddle, there's different things you would check with those. That's a different discussion. Those need to be checked with the rider in the saddle to engage the tree. But we don't have any of those to show you today, so that might be a different discussion.
I got some with broken tree.
Broken tree is a little different. They're flexible, but not the same deal. All right, I'm gonna come over again. So we're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna pull this down so you guys can see a little better. So what I noticed here with this one, so we don't have anything pressing on the spine, but this saddle is pretty much sitting up on top of this horse. The angle of the bars are not as flat as the saddle we just took off this horse, which is what we wanted. These are steeper. So it's kind of perched on top of this horse, which would make a saddle that's not very stable. The other thing I noticed is we don't have bridging, which is a good thing, but up in here we just don't have the contact that we want because the front of the tree can't come down behind the shoulder like it should. As far as the slope of it, it's following the slope of the horse. But you know, if it's not wide enough, it can't sit in the right place, and that makes an unstable platform for anybody riding or roping.
Yeah.
Any other questions about that?
I don't think so. I think that,
All right.
That works pretty good. I'll talk about the back since we're here.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about this earlier. So on a...
Go ahead and flip that stirrup up and they can kind of see.
Sure. So on a full double rig, which this is, which means your rigging is directly beneath the swells and the saddle horn.
Mm-hmm.
And then a 7/8 is 1 inch back, a 3/4 is 1 inch back, a 5/8 is 1 inch back from the very center of the rigging. So in my personal opinion, a full double and a 7/8 should always be ridden with a back cinch.
Mm-hmm.
With very few exceptions. Once in a while I ride without a back cinch.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got a full double or any of those riggings with a back cinch, it is doing you no good if it's like that.
Correct. And it's going to get you hurt because you can get a foot through there.
You can get a foot through there, you can get a stick through there, you can get your own spur hung in there.
And the point of your back cinch is, so since you have that pressure coming directly here behind the shoulder as a result of being full rigged, if you aren't equalizing the pressure on the tree with your back cinch, you're just putting all that pressure into their shoulder, and even if your saddle fit correctly, you're going to make them sore.
Right. And so this saddle is actually one of the few exceptions. Almost all of mine, I have a latigo on the back cinch because I was taught that your back cinch should be as tight or tighter than your front cinch. This one I just don't have one on there for whatever reason. So that's how I'd walk him off with it like that, and then before I went to get on him, I'd go to that one and have it so it keeps everything flat, keeps everything the same amount of tension.
And you want to have a connector that prevents your back cinch from sliding back out of position and becoming an 8-second ride for you.
Yeah, calamity strap.
Yes, I haven't heard that one.
If it breaks, you're in a calamity.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course, never leave it.
You'd want to tuck everything in.
You always want to tuck everything in, but you see so many people they think they're being nice to their horse by riding it loose like that.
And it's just an accident waiting to happen.
It really is, and it doesn't let your saddle perform the way it's supposed to.
Correct.
It just makes their back sore.
The other thing I want to add is when you're thinking, am I full rigged, am I 7/8, am I any of those numbers? As far as a lot of the production saddles, if you think about companies like Circle Y, Reinsman, Tucker, High Horse, which is a product of Circle Y, those different brand name Western saddles you can go into most tack stores and purchase, even HRs. You're either going to have full rigged or 7/8 in most cases. The 7/8, you'll see that a lot on trail saddles. We've been informed by the manufacturer that we can pair those without a back cinch and have them be successful for those riders. But if it's a full rig, they'd want it paired with a back cinch.
Just because we're here and we're on camera, keep talking and being entertaining for a second.
Being entertaining?
I would grab a 3/4.
Okay.
Most also because like you're not gonna find 5/8 anymore, like nobody uses.
Yeah, no.
I'm the only one that's got one.
Yeah.
There's gonna be 100 comments. I've got a 5/8, but I'll grab a 3/4 and just kind of show the little bit of difference.
Yeah, yeah. The other kind of thing you'll see on some saddles now is instead of just one ring right here, they'll have two for the front. And that's so you have options. You could either be full rigged, you could use both rings and tie it and be 7/8, or in the case of some horses, you could have that 3/4. All in the same rigging, just changing where you tie it.
So the first saddle we showed was a 7/8. The one we just took off is a full double. This is a 3/4. As you can see, I don't have a back cinch on it. And you see, that is just slight, it's only an inch. The center of it is an inch further back.
And your point of reference when he's talking about that is looking at the pommel, which is up here.
Yeah. Well, and it's slick forks that doesn't really have a
Yeah.
pommel. And just so everybody knows, my brother's been borrowing this saddle. I don't use squat tits. Those are his. I don't want anybody to think that I don't ride straight up slick when I ride slick. That's really important to me. All right. This
Take note.
The cinch is way too short, but so correct me if I'm wrong. I wouldn't like to ride a horse that's downhill like this in this rig without a back cinch.
I wouldn't want to. I think for horses that are downhill like this, you're better off having the option of having both of the cinches so that you can equalize the pressure. The benefit of this, since it is a little further back, you're not putting the pressure directly behind the shoulder, but I would still question the stability a little bit. That might be a case-by-case basis kind of situation there.
And besides being uncomfortable for him, it's going to be really uncomfortable for me too. Because he's downhill and being it's a 3/4, not a 7/8, there's not going to be a lot of this, but there's going to be some.
Just enough.
There's going to be enough.
You don't want that kind of movement in your saddle.
If I'm not on level ground, it's going to be uncomfortable for me. It's going to be really
Or if you put any pressure on that horn.
Yeah, for sure. If I rope something and it's in front of me, it's going to pull that. And honestly, the way this horse is built, if I was going to ride him in a single rig, I'd ride him in a 5/8, which is going to be the center of it's going to be here, and equalize that pressure even more. Would be my idea.
And then one of the other things I think is important to consider is I'll have questions where people ask me, should I have nylon tie straps? Should I have leather tie straps? And keep in mind, a lot of the people I'm working with in Missouri, they're riding recreationally. They're not necessarily doing this type of work. And one of the things I have to consider for them is what kind of maintenance do they want to put into cleaning their saddle? Are they going to maintain the leather? If you're not, that's not going to keep you safe. If you do the nylon, some people say that lays a little flatter under their leg because it's thinner, but you're still going to check and make sure that's not getting frayed anywhere or torn because that won't keep you safe. Another interesting conversation is each of the cinches that we've had have been a string cinch. If you're going to use a string cinch, you can use that either with the nylon straps or the leather, but if you use a rubber cinch and you pair it with a nylon strap, that doesn't have a lot of give to it, and you can have some really uncomfortable horses, so that's something to consider as well. I'm not saying you can't do it. Like if you ride short durations, you may not run into any issues with it, but you want to keep that into consideration when you're cinching up your horse. You don't want to cut them in half. You want it to be snug so that your saddle stays in place, but if you feel like you're having to crank down on your horse, something higher up isn't fitting properly.
And just to reiterate what you're saying about a synthetic cinch and a synthetic latigo, I've been told by professional chiropractors that combination has made them more money than anything else. Because, believe it or not, they can be out in their ribs or their sternum or all kinds of places in here. And every time somebody stands in one stirrup and leans over to get a gate or something like that, because there's no give, something's got to give.
It just ratchet straps down on them.
And so it's the horse. And you wouldn't think, especially with, I got 1, 2, 3 wraps in a latigo and a old mohair cinch that's got all the stretch out of it. You wouldn't think there's as much give, but because you can't get it as tight, there's some give to it. There's some roll to the saddle. There's some real benefits. And I'm with you. You want to use a synthetic cinch and a synthetic latigo, groovy, go for it.
Just be aware.
Just know what you're doing. So you in a situation like this, a lot less ways you can mess up, which is kind of always my default.
Yeah.
If there's less ways I can screw something up,
Yeah.
I go with that
Keep
way.
it simple.
I go with that way. So, well, cool. Thank you so much
You're very welcome.
for doing this, and we'll wrap it up. I'm supposed to say something smart at the end of all these. There's no place like home.
I got nothing to save you, Brad. I'm sorry.